Welcome, and thank you for attending this evening's program of the Faith and Reason Institute at Gonzaga University. My name is Douglas Crease. I teach in the philosophy department at Gonzaga, and I'm especially pleased to welcome you to tonight's program. This year, Gonzaga University is celebrating its 125th year of operation. The university was founded by Father Joseph Cataldo of the Society of Jesus. What you may not be very aware of is that in addition to founding Gonzaga University, Father Cataldo was very interested in the indigenous peoples, the native peoples of the Northwest, and particularly the region surrounding Spokane. Most of all, he was interested in learning the language of the Nez Perce people and translated a great many things into the Nez Perce language. In order to do this, of course, he had to learn Nez Perce himself, and so there are various language aids and so forth that he compiled that are still in existence at Gonzaga University's Foley Library. Our speaker this evening is Dr. Catherine Tkach. This year has been also something of a banner year, not only for Gonzaga University for Dr. Tkach, as she has published 3 books this year, one on the Ruthenian liturgy, one on the authority of the Greek New Testament, and also a new edition of Father Cataldo's Nez Perce Hymns and Prayers. Dr. Tkach earned her doctorate in 1983 in medieval studies at the University of Notre Dame. The focus of her scholarship has moved earlier and earlier as she has gone along, however, so that biblical studies and early Christian art now figure prominently in her research program. However, as I indicated, she has also, for this research project, moved forward in time to treat the Nez Perce hymns and prayers. In 2003, Dr. Tkach presented an exhibition at Foley Library titled The Gospels in Nez Perce. The research we celebrate this evening is a continuation of that line of research. The Faith and Reason Institute, I should add, is interested in sponsoring more research with the Nez Perce materials, and is collecting funds to support such research. Those who are interested in making contributions of $10 or more will receive a copy of the new publication on Nez Perce Hymns and Prayers as a token of gratitude from the Faith and Reason Institute. Well, with that, I would like to note that the title of the talk this evening is Cum Anye Wat, Hymns in Nez Perce. Dr. Catherine Tkach.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be with you this evening, and please let me know if I'm not speaking loudly enough. I'm caught between the laptop and the speaker, and to advance that I need to be here, so if you need to remind me, do so. My mind is going to be more on the content as I go along, and I might forget about my own volume. This evening will alternate my presentation about these materials with the singing of 3 of the hymns. We have a schola that's been preparing them, and we'll be able to hear the full harmony. So that's going to be important. And after we sing the hymns, we will then ask if anybody here knows something about the language and may perhaps correct our pronunciation or something like that, or have comments on the delivery. Let me give a disclaimer right at the start. I do not read Nez Perce. I do not speak Nez Perce. I have learned enough to make some helpful comments about it, and enough to edit this. I was able to find, well, let me go right on to the Nez Perce hymn book itself. The Indian hymn book is handwritten in 1909 by Father Cataldo at the St. Joseph Mission in Slickpoo, Idaho. This is an astounding artifact. It is apparently the oldest musical score for any song in any language that's indigenous to North America. Now, the Huron Christmas Carol is older. It goes back to the 16th century. But it does not seem to have been written down before later than this was written down. The words were recorded, and it was known what musical text was used. I'm sorry, what musical pattern was used with it. But the score wasn't put with the words. Here we have, as you see in the very first hymn, we have the top melodic line and a full accompaniment. More about that in a bit. Father Cataldo simply had a blank book of scores. Everything else is handwritten with ink. And then later on, it seems that he went back and a couple of times he had a score or two, a stave or two empty at the bottom of the page. And he put in a little bit of Gregorian chant as well. But except for those two short chant pieces, all the texts are Nez Perce. Fittingly, on the day that Gonzaga opens the school year with the Mass of the Holy Spirit, we will be singing the Nez Perce translation of that hymn. By the way, Father Cataldo then was 71 or 72 when he wrote this down. And we do know that the keyboard accompaniment was used because at the Slickpoo Mission, some of the nuns were teaching music and using the keyboard, one of their pupils being Julia Webb. Father Tom Connolly of the Jesuits has retired now to Gonzaga University's Jesuit house. But for decades, he was working with the Flathead and Nez Perce, and he is the source of some of my information here. Happily, in addition to the handwritten hymnal, we have some printed sources, and I was able to find 2 additional sources beyond that for some of the same hymns. All of the hymns are repeated in a 1909 volume that was printed by Father Cataldo the same year he handwrote the hymnal. This is particularly valuable because in the handwritten hymnal, you saw how cramped that was. 1, at the most 2 verses could be fit in. Up to 7 verses are in the printed version. So we have a much richer extension of this hymn collection. And later on, 1925, there was another volume that includes some of the same hymns. In addition, we have a couple of vocal sources that I'll come to later on. For those of you who are interested in learning more about doing more with Nez Perce or any of the other indigenous languages of the region, here are a couple of resources on the next few screens. I'm including this because the Faith and Reason Institute is going to mount this PowerPoint on the internet, so this bibliography is going to be accessible in that way, and that's why I've got bibliographic details that wouldn't be fun to talk about, but you know you can get at them here. Just go to that very simple URL and click on it, and you can go to the online version of the exhibition. And it has footnotes and bibliography. This is an extraordinarily useful guide, and this is also over in Foley Library Center. The Doctors Carricker, and Dr. Bob Carricker is in the history department here, prepared a microfilm edition of all the native language materials in the archives of the Oregon province of the Society of Jesus. They also made guides to the different regional groups. It's not just a wonderful resource for identifying what the texts were that were produced and where to find them on microfilm. They also wrote excellent introductions and identify the specific persons involved in the work and the type of work they did. There were 26 Jesuit priests who were missionaries in this area who left written documentation. A number of them knew several languages. Father Cataldo knew 10 Native American languages, not all from this region. He spent a few years at the start of the 20th century up in Alaska and learned some of the languages there. I don't know if Athabascan was among them, but it may have been. But he knew a number of languages from the region. Dictionaries are crucial for working with languages. It's fascinating that one of the things the missionary priests did was to compile dictionaries for the different languages, as well as some grammatical works. We have a verb book, very thorough verb book for Nez Perce, for instance, compiled by the priests, and the printed book says in collaboration with the Nez Perce. Father Anthony Morvillo actually published a dictionary in Nez Perce. In manuscript, there are 4 different dictionaries up in the archives. And Haruo Aoki published a Nez Perce dictionary also in 1994. The 3 hymns tonight are, I thought, a useful sample of the materials in the hymnal. The first one, Cum Agniwat, is from a 9th century Latin hymn, Veni Creator Spiritus. And Father Cataldo chose to use the more modern music that had only existed for a few decades when he used it, by the French Jesuit Father Louis Lambelotte. We'll talk about why when we get to that hymn. Then there's a Christmas carol, and finally, a hymn that seems to have been composed in Nez Perce. Most of the hymns are translations from Latin or from a European language, but not this one. And this one has been in the memory of some members of the tribe down to the present, which also, I think, gives it a great importance. That and a few other texts prepared by Father Cataldo have been known by memory. Angel Sabota, and am I pronouncing that last name correctly? Sabota? I think it's Sabota. Learned from her maternal grandmother the Lord's Prayer in the words that Father Cataldo put it into back in the turn of the last century. A few things on pronunciation. He was a Sicilian, and that's happily for us because in Italian, what you see is what you get, basically, in terms of pronunciation. With one difference that we don't always use in English, the Z is pronounced as TS, and in other texts, you will see the same word spelled with a TS, where Father Cataldo sometimes puts a Z. It's the Z as in pizza, TS. And also notice that in pizza, the I is a long E sound. That's also true. You'll see the word P-up, and the I is a long E sound. UA, he also spells elsewhere, and other Jesuits spell WA. You can see why they're very close, wa, wa. It's sort of from 2 vowels into a consonantal sound. The word Agniwat was a Nez Perce word. It meant a maker. So if you made baskets or made arrows, you were a maker, an Agniwat. And they adapted that word with the new meaning of creator, God the creator. I found that spelled with a U, with a W, and usually later with an H in front of it. But it's the same word, creator. Happily, we have some recordings made by Lauren Olson of Sam Slickpoo singing a number of hymns. And I noticed that in those he pronounces the names of the holy figures according to English pronunciation. That's just invaluable to know how to say that. So Jesus Christ is not Jesus Christ or something like that. It's Jesus Christ. Bethlehem, Mary. A few words. Akam Kinikum is, I think, an exciting word. This shows that the Jesuits were learning the language before they tried to fully communicate in it. There is a Nez Perce word meaning above, akam, and a word meaning a person who is above, akam kiniku. And they use those words for heaven and for God, God above. So they were adapting, they were adding a new meaning that fit very well with the original sense of the word. I've listed here some words you'll see in the hymns tonight. Piep, brother, Pist, father, Lautwa, friend, Miogat, king, Nunim, our, and Ipnim, his. The NIM suffix is the way of showing possession. And let me see if I've got a space of board here I can write this on. You'll see in the end of the verse of the Christmas carol, a contraction using that ending. If you spell out the word in full, it would be Marinim. Well, say that over your head a few times fast, Marinim, Marinim. You end up dropping something out. What you find handwritten in the hymnal, where he didn't have much space. Oh, come on now, pen. Marim. He just left out this part. In the printed version, which was partly for the teaching of the children, I think he was wanting them to learn through it their own language. And what he has there is Mary Nm. And of course you wouldn't really, can't say mm. But he wanted them to see, we've just left out the second I. I think this is sort of the intellectual version of the quick version you say or sing. And that's still this possessive. Titokan, human, and silakt, body. Well, let us turn to the first hymn. This is the way, you saw what it looked like in the handwritten hymnal. This is the way it looks put into modern scoring. Maureen Ploss did that for us, which was a great labor of love. It was quite difficult to get the words placed correctly under the syllables. Now, this is what the whole page in the hymnal looks like in the new version. But for the purposes of using it here tonight, I wanted to enlarge it. What we're going to do now is I'll make a few comments, and then our singers will come forward, and I'll sing it with them. Then see if there are any comments from you, and then I'd like to invite you to sing it with us as we sing it again. The original Latin has 4 lines in each verse, each one with 8 syllables. And the Gregorian chant music fits that very closely. Father Cataldo's translation has 8 syllables, 7 syllables, 13, and then 8. So it's not going to fit that pattern. He had to adapt the music. I think this is partly why he chose Father Lambilot's musical setting, which you'll recognize as the music for Come Holy Ghost, because it has 4 more measures. So he had more space to try and fit the notes in. And with that said, I think we're ready to sing it. This is one of the songs on the handouts. There are 2 handouts, one double-sided and the other one-sided, and you have all three songs on those together. Translate the rest of it, but clearly he's using the same ideas, and the first three words are exactly as in the Latin. Does anybody have any comments on the pronunciation or anything? In that case, if not, please join us in singing this again. Sung before, both at the 2008 reception for the exhibition over in Foley, and also in the spring of 2009, when at Lewis Clark College there was a workshop on Nez Perce hymnody. There we are fortunate to have gotten a rough translation from the Nez Perce who were present. Heavenly Child, the one who gave himself for us, now he is in Bethlehem, that land, Mary's very little child. A joke on myself. When I was first working with the hymnal and had never heard any music before and was sounding it out in my head and then on piano, I was looking for things that might be actual Nez Perce compositions rather than borrowings from English. And when I came to this one, there was a strong rhythm. And I thought, well, maybe that's an original rhythm. Maybe that is a Nez Perce composition. And then I got to the chorus, which is, and I knew I was wrong. So that one won't fit. This is from Angels We Have Heard on High, but you'll see the words are quite different. That's true of a number of the Native American Christmas carols and other hymns that the Jesuits prepared. Sometimes the words in the Native American language are quite different from the Latin or modern European language they were coming from. Now, Father Tom Connolly has told me that he has heard this sung by the Nez Perce more slowly than you can imagine anybody could sing. Now, the chorus, of course, are the words of the angels announcing the birth of Christ. So perhaps that slowness was to convey a sense of majesty, awesomeness. And therefore, we want to try to sing that slowly tonight. That's a good idea. We'll sing it once with melody alone, and then repeat it in harmony. And in this case, when we repeat it, please just, no, because they need to hear the harmony first. Take that back. Let's sing it together now, the first time.
Nun mein Tito
This next hymn is one of those composed in Nez Perce. There is a flathead version also, but I'm not exactly sure if they have exactly the same meaning. It was known by heart by a few Nez Perce. And 2 verses and the chorus were sung by Richard Half Moon to Father Tom Connolly, who transcribed them, words and music. Fascinating to me is that it's the same music, the same words as in the 1909 hymnal, but transposed about 1/3 lower. And we're singing lower tonight because my voice won't come up as high as what is written. Father Connolly did not remember exactly when he transcribed it, sometime in the 70s or 80s, he thought it was likely. It was certainly sung at the Tetacuitha conference when Pope John Paul II was present, and several tribes together sang this hymn, those 2 verses and the chorus. There are 2 additional verses. There are 7 verses in the 1909 printed book and 2 additional ones in the 1925 book, but they're in a different spelling system and they don't have the tonic marked, whereas Father Cataldo put in the accent mark, which is how we know where to put the accent. Now, a difficulty, if you see from what you have on the handout, it all fits there nicely. Every verse has a different number of syllables. So what I did was take Father Cataldo's music and try and figure out what his principles were for fitting it together. He liked to put an accent on a downbeat, which is natural, that's pretty much universal. But there are more accents than there are downbeats, so that was tricky. And where do I have my, oh dear. Someplace I have every single verse. Ah, thank you. What I did was score each verse, and I'll have that up on the screen for you to see. And notice, let's get to the music so I can point out a couple of things. Oh, this is what all the verses look like in the new edition. Oh yes, the translation. And Father Tom Connolly had written that out with his transcription, and Angel Sabota also has worked with it, and she uses the same translation. So we have confirmation there. Now he is coming, our brother, coming from heaven. He is giving to us his body. This is a communion hymn. This is our Father, this is our friend, this is our King, this is our Creator. From heaven his Son, on us he is descending. For us he made himself Ignania, and that's repeated, Ignania. He made himself human. There's an emphasis here on the incarnation. Now, if you look at this, I want to point out a couple of things. Let me just go over and stand by it. This end here is the end of the chorus. It's chorus, verse, on through the end, and then chorus to complete the piece. You'll notice the quarter note there. For some of the verses where I'm going to be coming in on singing the 3rd verse or the 5th verse, I'm going to sing over that quarter rest, because that puts the accent then on the downbeat for the word that's coming. And in some places, a lot of words have to fit in on a very few syllables, so you'll find it moving quickly there. Now, the structure of this is that the chorus is divided into 8 measures and then 7. And the verse is 7 measures and then 7. That, I think, may be according to a Nez Perce style. I don't know, but that's not something I'm familiar with, and I really wanted to make this into 2 measures. In fact, the first time I sang it as 2 measures to make the first half of the verse be 8 measures followed by 7. But it really is 7, and we'll hold to that. But I warn you, when you get here, you may want to slow it down. So what we'll do is, I think, let's sing what they have on, we will sing what they have on the handout. And then we'll all sing what we have on the handout and continue with me doing the verses and you doing the chorus. So that way we can do the entire 7 verses of this hymn. Walk we Duncan, the director, who has sung every performance that we've done of these hymns. And she's joined tonight by seminarians of the Diocese of Spokane, Justin Leedy and Richard Gravlin. I meant to show you these verses, but then it proved impossible to hold the score and move the... So here you're seeing the scores, which are on the internet, so that you can get the score. What Maureen Ploss did was to put what you have there, what was exactly in Father Cataldo's song. And in this, I could be wrong, of course, in how I'm setting the music to the words and how I'm breaking it up. But at least this is something to start with and work from. And if people can amend it or correct it, that's wonderful. Here is the text of the 2 additional verses. So that's going to be on the internet as well. And notice here, Father Cataldo's Z has become a TS in the later spelling. I wanted to include for you a reference to the Sacred Heart, because that has been an important devotion to the Nez Perce from the start, from the evidence I've seen. This prayer card is among Father Cataldo's papers, and it's a devotion to the Sacred Heart in Nez Perce. One of the hymns in the book, the only piece like this in the handwritten hymnal, is entirely music. That is what you have in the hymnal. It fills the full page just to put the music in there. No words are with it. However, in the 1909 book and later, you also have all these verses. This is a dialogue song between the faithful, who sings the first verse, addressed to the Sacred Heart, the Timine, and then the response of God to the faithful. So this is a new composition in the Native American languages. I'm not sure if it's exclusive, I don't think it's exclusive to Nez Perce. I don't know which language it first was written in. And I think maybe it's meant to go with the music. So I also instructed Maureen to make another version of that score, separating out from it, extracting from it the melody line, so that somebody else can experiment and see if those words will fit this music. And a word that I've learned from the Nez Perce, a phrase rather, is ketchuyu, which means thank you. So I think it's fitting to express that to Father Cataldo. And I'd open this up for conversation now if anybody has any comments about the hymns or about Father Cataldo's work. Thank you very much for your attention and for singing. That was moving to me to hear that hymn sung with all those 7 verses. Yes?
Do you have a copy of the Protestant hymns as well?
Yes.
The one that we have doesn't show the score at all, just the words.
Yes, there are. Well, I'm sure there are many Protestant hymnals, and there were lots of translations into Nez Perce done by the Protestants. Certainly there were. There are a number of them in the archives, and Father Tom Connolly lent me one, and I made a photocopy of the whole thing, so I could be looking at that as well. Yeah. Lauren Pearson, Professor Lauren Pearson, emeritus from Washington State University, does a great deal with the Protestant hymnody. And since this was a unique artifact, I figured I should really focus on that and do as much as I could. One thing I noticed, I take it that you've worked with the Protestant hymns some?
We've sung some,
Yeah. I noticed that they shared the feature with the Catholic of taking over some words that really it would be so hard to put into any other language, such as Pharisee. What you going to do with that? Bethlehem, things like that. Yeah. Do you know Nez Perce yourself?
No, but these are our friends who are nesters.
If you have any thoughts on the pronunciation, that would be very helpful. And
Did it sound close to what it's supposed to sound like? Oh, good.
we're at a disadvantage because we don't know what it should sound like in terms of vocal quality. And the recordings that we have are of elderly people singing. And I find it difficult to figure out, is this an older voice, or is this because it's a native delivery? So that's, I know Margaret has an extremely sweet voice, and I'm not sure that that's exactly what it should sound like. Maybe a little huskier. I'm a little huskier now, so that maybe that helps. Yes.
I noticed that with the Bene Creator, that even though some variations had to be made to meet what is apparently the Nez Perce syntax, the Nez Perce, at least phonetically, Nez Perce does seem to fit the chant in a way that's rather close to the Latin. I mean, there are some variations, but there's not that many. And so it sounds like chant is a very good way to convey a language like Nez Perce musically. And I wonder if that's generally true of North American tribal languages, or whether that's peculiar to Nez Perce.
My impression here, because the translations do not aim for strict meter or strict rhyme, any rhyme at all, is that chant is the natural idiom for this language. And I don't know if that's universal, but it could be. It could well be. I don't know anything about poetics in the languages of North America. But as far as I know, they don't have rhyme. So that it would, and that I think is a good thing. I think it's a good thing that I don't know of anybody who tried to import rhyme into it, try to make it rhyme. If you're going to sing a hymn, it has to rhyme. That's a good thing, I think. They wanted to use the poetics. And in fact, that's a traditional Christian thing. We have St. Jerome, who translated the Bible from Hebrew and Greek into Latin in the 4th and 5th centuries, has many statements about poetics and how there are things you can do in Hebrew that you cannot do in Latin. And how we tried to come up with a different substitute for that, to try and give a poetic flavor to it where you couldn't imitate exactly what was going on. And it seems to me that Father Cataldo was doing that here as well. We have hymns, by the way, also in the archives by a number of other priests. I think Father Edward Riva, and we know about hymns from Father Nicholas Point, who was also an artist, and we have some drawings of the native peoples and the landscape by him in some sources. And some of them worked with the Nez Perce. Father Griva and Father Point apparently wrote in their diaries or something like that about how, as they were teaching the peoples, they on their own began to put the hymns into Nez Perce. And then the priest began working with them. But it had been initiated by the Nez Perce in those cases. The other hymns that exist in the archives don't have music. So you can't sing those unless you put them to an existing tune or something like that. Yes?
Could you go back, please, really quickly to the slide of the Sacred Heart in Ms. Pierce?
Sure.
Okay, so I guess my first question is, why do you think that the Sacred Heart of Jesus was something special to the Ms. Pierce?
Where did that go to? There we go. My thought is that the heart was already important, symbolically and in the understanding of the importance of the heart within the individual, so that it already had a role in the culture. Dr. Eric Cunningham has an article where he wants to address that in an issue of the Catholic Studies Journal a couple of years back. So that, I think, is, but you have a comment.
Just a comment that the Nez Perce creation story is based around the heart of the monster Leucadia. So it's a basalt outcropping. It's called the Heart of the Monster. It's a story of creation.
So apparently then from the start it had important symbolic value. But it was intriguing to me that there are a number of things connected with the Sacred Heart, and that the dialogue hymn, and it's a long one, was very popular apparently. That's a good question.
Also, sort of a second one to follow up with it. Do you happen to know where I could maybe find this or get my hands on it? Because it would be actually really nice to pray this in the original
Sure.
spirits.
If memory serves, that may be one of the things you get through the online exhibition. I may have transcribed it so that you go to the part where it talks about this and you click on it and get a copy. But also, you can just read it from that, I think, if you enlarge it.
And sorry, how would I find this?
Oh, the Faith and Reason Institute is going to post the PowerPoint. So that's the images you're seeing there.
Yeah, what's the URL for the Faith Reason website?
Oh,
It's gufaithreason.org.
gufaithreason.org.
Thanks, appreciate it.
and in fact, I'm glad you mentioned praying things in Nez Perce. I'm hoping you'll take these handouts with the hymns and use them, sing and pray them. I think it would be wonderful if people would use the Christmas Carol. Now, people already know the song. It's easy to add on another verse at the end. I don't expect you all to change the tempo and go more slowly. And in fact, I've heard that now things are not sung as slowly. It's just, but I was trying to recreate what had been apparently the tradition. And by the way, I'm getting off now on the slowness of things. It impressed me when Father Tom Connolly said he'd heard the Nez Perce sing this so slowly you wouldn't think it would be possible to sing that slowly. It impressed me with what he did not say. He didn't say we couldn't get them to sing it faster. There was nothing like that. These were the songs the people had made their own. And the way they were singing it is the way he wanted to honor them. And so that's why I wanted us to sing it slowly tonight. And I wanted us to hear the harmony. There's more complexity, by the way, in some of the other hymns. There's a whole range of musical styles, and the hymnal as a whole is just a fascinating document. Well, again, thank you very much. This has been a most enjoyable evening.